I've got a screen in the back of this box. Everybody see that? You guys can feel that breeze moving through that building, through our building today. And that breeze is going to move through this cubby and help push both the scent of our lure and our bait out of this box. So and it appears to that fisher that he can enter this cubby and go through the other side. It's more of a tunnel to him than it is a dead end. So that's a positive aspect. You can see on this, I've got running a pan instead of wire triggers. And that's what I prefer in a cubby situation. I don't like the wire triggers hanging down. Some of the small females, they can get into that box and get at that bait, and you might catch him, but they've got so far into the box that you're going to catch him by the hips. And the fisher will fight a trap a long time, especially hip caught. Now, I caught 2 fisher last year that were alive, and they really tore the area up, and they were caught extremely well, right behind the head. Typically, with that pan, that's where your strike's going to be. They're consistently, you're going to get one bar right behind the head and the other one right behind the chest. But even well caught, a fisher will struggle like the Tasmanian devil. And I learned that the hard way. I used to wire to a tree. I would anchor to the tree with just typical trapping wire. And when that fisher fights that trap, it would burn that wire off. And on 2 occasions, I had to go searching. I had to trail the fisher, and I found him, about 30 yards from where I'd caught him, and he'd climbed underneath the brush pile, and I had to go underneath there and drag him out. And my wife took pictures as I took this live fisher out of a 160 conibear. It so happened that I was bobcat trapping in this instance, and it was an incidental fisher, and he was still alive. So it's kind of tricky. You want to keep that fisher, his feet on the ground, because if he's going to use them back legs like a cat. So taking that thing out, it's important that I kept his feet on the ground. If he'd have flipped up onto his stomach, he could open me up. So extremely strong. They've even had trouble with Brittany Spaniels in the grouse woods, and they'll get after a fisher, and the fisher will eventually turn and fight. And if that dog gets a hold of that fisher will flip on his back, and he'll use them back legs, and he'll de-gut that dog. He'll open him right up. And you're going to be pushing the guts back in as you're trying to get that dog back to the vehicle. So extremely hard fighting. So another advantage to the pans on a system like this is bobcats don't like to push with their face. So typically when we're in fisher country, we're also got the possibility of catching bobcats, and the bobcat doesn't like to push those wires out of the way. Most of the guys in Minnesota that are putting up good numbers of bobcats are doing it with pans on their traps. So when I'm anchoring, I mentioned I don't use wire. I'm using exclusively cable. I happened to borrow this from Newt Sterling this morning. And basically, I would just fasten that to the trap. He could fight that for days and not break that cable. So way better system than wire. I know some places you can't use body grip traps in the ground. Anybody have that in their state where you can't use body grip traps in the ground? What state are you from? Pennsylvania. And yeah, only in the water course. But there's no reason you couldn't use a cubby in this situation and put a leg hold trap in front of it, and just like a fox trap, just set that trap right in front there. You still got your bait for him to work it. He's going to cross that trap pan. So Some states you're required to set in trees with conibears. Anybody that can use conibears, but they have to be in a tree, is Pennsylvania like that? Can you use a conibear in a tree? Or a fisher will work a set, come up from the bottom. You could invert the box and let him go up from the bottom, or you can flip it around and have him come up from the top. Fisher are very good climbers, but they spend about 90% of their time on the ground. And I've found, especially the males, the big heavy males, they're lazy. They're good hunters, and they don't put a bunch of extra work into getting fed. And they're reluctant. It's nothing more frustrating than when Fisher were bringing $100 to walk up to an elevated set and see where he ran around that thing about 6 times and then took off. He just didn't want to put the energy into it. And, you know, how many of us would climb a ladder to go eat at McDonald's? And that's about the best scenario I could give you, you know. He's fat and he's lazy, and he'll wait for a better opportunity. So, yes, Jim? Okay, the question Jim asked is if we were to bed a trap in front of there. He wants to know if we would cover it and blend it in. Yes, it's not as important, you know, it's as it would be with a fox or something. Pine marten, for instance, you could take a piece of bacon and tack it to the tree and set the trap underneath there, completely exposed. And the pine marten would jump up and down in that pan and try and get that piece of bacon. Completely fearless. The fisher would be a bit more reluctant, but you wouldn't have to do a very good job of blending that set in. Just stabilize that trap, get a little something over it so it's not glaring, and he'll work that set, no problem. So I've caught a fair amount of fisher when I'm fox trapping.